Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about another Canadian case, which is the 2019 Northern British Columbia murders. In the summer of 2019, a string of mysterious murders started along the Alaska Highway in British Columbia, which ultimately led to a nationwide manhunt. In fact, this was the most extensive and large-scale manhunt in Canadian history. This case ended up gaining worldwide attention, and if you're watching and you're from Canada, I'd be really surprised to learn that you haven't heard of this case before. I watched this case unfold in real time, and I was just glued to the news waiting for updates on this one. It is just so insane. So let's just get into it. This case starts out in northern British Columbia, where 24-year-old Chynna Dyck and her boyfriend, 23-year-old Lucas Fowler, were on a road trip in July of 2019. Lucas Fowler was Australian, specifically he was from Sydney, Australia. He was the fourth child in the Fowler family, and his father was a senior detective with the New South Wales Police Department. Lucas was described as a very kind and fun person to be around. He definitely wasn't the sit at home on the couch kind of guy. He always wanted to go out and find something new to explore. He was said to love anything you could do outdoors, but he especially enjoyed spending his time riding dirt bikes, camping, and hiking. Lucas loved adventure and, in his 20s, developed a passion for travel, one that took him on a 2-year backpacking trip around the world. And on this trip, he visited Croatia in 2017, which is where he met Chynna Dyck. Chynna was working in Europe at the time, but was originally from North Carolina. She was also the youngest from a big family and shared Lucas's love for traveling and adventure. These two were said to be inseparable and were very compatible, so they fell in love pretty quickly. Although they were in a long-distance relationship with Lucas living in Australia and Chynna in the US, they traveled a lot together. They had been all over Asia and South America and made the most out of their time together on these trips. When they were apart, they would talk for hours every single day on the phone, looking forward to the next adventure they would go on together. The couple's families were thrilled the two had found each other. Lucas's father described their relationship as they were full of happiness and joy just being together, and they spent their time together just milking every last drop of fun out of life. In 2019, the couple had been together for 2 years when Lucas ended up taking a job on a ranch in a remote part of British Columbia, Canada. While in BC, he was blown away by how beautiful it was with its stunning views, dense forests, bright blue rivers, waterfalls, and mountain peaks that are amongst the most beautiful in the world. Lucas and Chynna then planned to take a 3-week-long road trip together. They wanted to explore all of the natural beauty that BC had to offer, and they planned on ending the road trip in Alaska. So on July 13th, 2019, Chynna met Lucas in BC, and the two set off in Lucas's 1986 blue Chevrolet van, excited to be together and do what they both loved the most. A few days into the road trip, the couple stopped at a gas station in Fort Nelson where they were caught on surveillance video. In the video, you can see they fill up the van, wash the windows, and at the end, you can see them hug each other. They look so happy in this clip, and you can tell how happy they are to just be together. It's honestly just such a very sweet clip. And it's heartbreaking to think that in this moment, little did they know that they were actually about 24 hours away from their lives being over. After getting gas, the couple kept driving ahead according to plan, but the next day, on July 14th, they ran into car trouble on the Alaska Highway. The van actually broke down and they were stuck at the side of the road about 20 kilometers south of Leonard Hot Springs, which is a popular tourist stop in northern BC. Throughout the day, numerous people stopped to offer help to Chynna and Lucas. At approximately 3:20 p.m. that day, a couple drove by them and stopped to see if they could assist in any way. They spoke with Chynna and Lucas and later reported that they seemed not stressed at all. They were just waiting for the truck to unflood before they were going to try to start it again. And while they were talking with the couple, Chynna and Lucas were actually having a picnic at the side of the road, and it seemed like they were just making the best out of the situation. The couple said that they seemed happy and they were smiling and assured them that if they couldn't get the van to start, they were just going to call a tow truck in the morning. So since Chynna and Lucas seemed like they had it completely under control, the couple that had stopped went on their way. But then the following morning, around 7 a.m., a transport truck driver was driving along the Alaska Highway when he spotted the van at the side of the road ahead. And as he got closer, he realized there were 2 bodies lying in a ditch beside the van. The bodies were later identified to be 24-year-old Chynna Dyck and 23-year-old Lucas Fowler. Both bodies showed visible gunshot wounds, and they were both lying face down, about 15 feet apart from each other. The van was found with both of the back doors left open, and one of the windows was smashed. There were also many bullet casings left at the scene. The coroner confirmed they both had been shot to death, and they were murdered sometime between late evening on July 14th and early morning on July 15th. Both of their families were notified, and the word about this spread pretty quickly around the world because both victims were of different nationalities, and it was also so mysterious. You know, you had this couple who were seemingly killed for no reason, and by who? They didn't know anyone around there, they were just traveling and just passing through. And the Royal Canadian Mounted Police confirmed that they didn't think these murders were linked to any other ongoing cases in the area, so it was all just very mysterious.
It's an international mystery, the brutal murder of a young American woman and her boyfriend. The bodies of 24-year-old Chynna Dyck of Charlotte, North Carolina, and her 23-year-old boyfriend, Lucas Fowler, were found on a stretch of the 1,400-mile-long Alaska Highway in a remote part of Canada. The back window of their blue Chevy van was blown out by a shotgun blast. Chynna's mom says catching the killer needs to be a priority.
I'm shaking. Because I'm going to a place in my mind I haven't been before. I have not, in my mind, I haven't thought about what's going to happen when I see the face of the person that did this.
Lucas is the son of a senior Australian police officer who immediately flew to Vancouver to help find his son's killer.
It's just devastating, and our heart goes out to the whole of her family. You know, we're just crushed.
Pretty early on in the investigation, a witness came forward. A highway maintenance worker reported that she drove past the van at the side of the road around 11:30 p.m. the night before the bodies were found. She said she saw a man with a beard standing beside the van talking to Lucas and Chynna, and it seemed like they were arguing and that the conversation seemed heated. She also said that it looked like the man came from a gray car, but she couldn't say for certain, and she later reported that the whole encounter just gave her a bad feeling, so she kept driving. The maintenance worker later sat down with a sketch artist, and the RCMP released the sketch to the public in hopes that someone may have caught the man on dashcam footage. Shortly after this, a man named Ken Albertson came forward and reported a very interesting encounter to police. Ken was a 55-year-old photographer who was driving home to Alaska after a family trip on July 17th, which was 3 days after Chynna and Lucas were found. He had been driving for 15 hours straight when he pulled over to the side of the Alaska Highway in Yukon, about 100 kilometers from the BC border, to take a nap. Just as he was getting ready to close his eyes, a pickup truck drove past him and stopped a little further up the road. Then a tall, skinny man got out of the truck and started walking towards him, and the man was holding a long gun. The gunman then began approaching Ken's vehicle, while the pickup truck began driving to the front of his car to block his exit. Ken quickly realized that this was an ambush, and while fearing he would be shot at any moment, he acted very quickly and was able to slam his foot on the gas and speed away. This tip definitely brought a whole new level of fear to the police because it seemed like a person, possibly 2 people, were driving around trying to kill passerbys at random. Then, 4 days after the bodies of Chynna and Lucas were found, a burnt-out pickup truck was discovered near the community of Dease Lake, British Columbia, more than 470 kilometers away from the first crime scene. The plate on the truck was registered to 19-year-old Kam McLeod, who was on a road trip with his best friend, 18-year-old Bryer Schmigelski. Kam and Bryer were both from Port Alberni on Vancouver Island and had been friends since elementary school. They worked at a local Walmart together, but recently quit because they were planning on moving to Yukon to find work. Bryer's grandmother described the sudden move and road trip to be very spur of the moment. They said goodbye to their families on July 12th and set out on their trip in Kam's truck. Now here we are a week later, Kam's burnt-out truck is found, but there is no sign of either teen. So where are they? Kam texted his family on July 15th, confirming that they had made it to Yukon. The text just said, in Whitehorse. Bryer also texted his mom on July 15th, and she later reported that nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The last communication either family had with them was on July 17th, 2 days before the burnt-out truck was found. So the families were very confused because if they had made it to Yukon, why did they turn around and come back to BC? Had they ever even made it to Yukon? And where were they now? Police combed through the remote area where the burnt-out truck was found, and they ended up finding a dead body. 2 kilometers south of the vehicle, the body of 64-year-old Leonard Dyck was found. He too had been shot to death. Leonard's wife said that he had been on a solo camping trip for the last few days and had been texting her and their 2 kids constantly until July 18th, when all communication stopped. Leonard was a Vancouver resident and a botany professor at the University of British Columbia. He was described as a brilliant person with an extreme passion for his profession. He spent 2 decades researching botany with a specific focus on seaweed. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology in 1978 and a Master's of Science in Botany in 1991. He then went on to complete a PhD in botany in 2004. He was said to have an astonishing amount of knowledge and was loved by his students and colleagues. He was admired by many for the way he would captivate every student in the room when he would teach. He was a loving husband to his wife of 30 years and a caring father to his 2 sons who were 22 and 19 at the time. His research and his family were the 2 most important things in his life. He loved to spend his time with his family and being out in nature. He loved camping and seeing all the amazing wildlife that BC had to offer. On July 16th, Leonard packed up his Toyota RAV4 with a tent, sleeping bag, food, and all the other necessary camping stuff he would need for the next few days. He said goodbye to his family for the very last time and left for his camping trip. Upon further inspection of his campsite, which was now a crime scene, investigators quickly realized that his Toyota RAV4 was missing. In the span of only a couple days, the British Columbia RCMP had 3 bodies on their hands, as well as 2 missing teenagers. Based on the pure randomness of it all and the similar circumstances around both crime scenes, the RCMP quickly announced the possibility of the 2 northern BC cases being connected. The mysterious murders started gaining worldwide attention, and many feared that Kam and Bryer had also been met with foul play. So the RCMP shifted their focus to locating the 2 boys. Bryer's father, Alan Schmigelski, soon spoke out, fearing the worst had happened to his son.
So you must, any idea what might have happened, or theories that you're kind of coming up with at this point, or?
All I can think of is they were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. They're both kids. They're non-violent. Like they're good people. You would call them good people, eh? Like, there's young people, but they're good people. Never got in trouble or anything, right? And I'm thinking that a murder was committed 2 kilometers away, and somebody decided, oh, let's take care of the witnesses. Okay? Now, I talked to RCP at 5:51 this morning, and they told me it was not my son and it was not his friend. Okay? They were able to identify that the body was neither of them. So I'm thinking they're at the wrong place at the wrong time.
But then on July 21st, the RCMP would release security footage that would change everything. Kam and Bryer were spotted in a home improvement store in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan, roughly 2,000 kilometers away from Dease Lake, and Saskatchewan being 2 provinces over from BC. The teens everybody was praying for were alive and well, and clearly on the run, as they had managed to travel a virtually 24-hour drive in only 3 days. I feel like the clip of them exiting the store is burned into my brain. Like those pictures in that clip was just everywhere for weeks. They were also seen at a gas station in Saskatchewan filling up Leonard's Toyota RAV4, which they tried to disguise with black tape. Kam's burnt-out truck had also been searched, and in the remnants, ammunition was found in the truck. And this ammunition matched the casings found at both crime scenes. The RCMP then held a press conference and made the announcement that Kam McLeod and Brian Schmigelski were wanted as suspects in the murders of Chynna Dees, Lucas Fowler, and Leonard Dyck, which was a bombshell that nobody was expecting.
Given these latest developments, Kam and Bryer are no longer considered missing. The RCMP are now considering Kam McLeod and Bryer Schmigelski as suspects in the Dees Lake suspicious death and the double homicide of Lucas Fowler and Chynna Dees. We're asking for the public, if you spot Bryer or Kam, consider them dangerous. Do not approach, take no action, and call immediately 911.
It turns out that the same day that Kam and Bryer said goodbye to their families, they went to a Cabela's outdoor gear store and went straight to the guns and ammunition section. Using Kam's possession and acquisition license, the teens bought a Soviet SKS carbine, 2 magazines, and 20 rounds of ammunition. Bryer's father was interviewed again after learning his son was wanted for 3 heinous crimes. And he said that his son is in very serious pain and he expects this all to end in a blaze of glory.
They were just everyday, regular kids. But both of them have to have a lot of pain inside. Both of them. They had told me that the Walmart jobs just weren't cutting it. They were going to go to Alberta and make some proper money. I believe that's what they were going to do, and I was absolutely flabbergasted to learn that 2 days later, and I found this out from the paper, that they were up in the Yukon. But initially, it looked like they were victims as well, right? Initially. And it's really tough for me to see in the paper today photos of them alive and well in Saskatchewan. So I know they're not lost in the woods. That's incredibly hard to deal with. A normal child doesn't travel across the country killing people. A child in some very serious pain does. Mounties are going to shoot first and ask questions later. Basically, he's going to be dead today or tomorrow. Hey, I know that. I would say, rest in peace, Bryer. I love you. I'm so sorry all this had to happen. I'm so sorry that I couldn't rescue you.
Kam's girlfriend came forward after the announcement was made and told the RCMP she had received a text from him on July 13th. She asked him why he left without telling her, to which he responded, "Seriously sorry, but I'm not coming back." This message left her pretty confused, and I imagine she felt quite betrayed, and it was very mysterious. They were clearly on a mission, on a killing spree, and anyone who crossed paths with them would be in serious danger. The scariest part was that they could literally be anywhere, and none of their families or anyone had any idea where they were headed and why. They were covering lots of ground very quickly. Canada-wide warrants were issued for the arrest of Kam and Bryer, and this was when the national manhunt began. Both boys were slender, both over 6 feet tall, and their faces were literally everywhere. They had been spotted at various gas stations since they first left Vancouver Island, a couple convenience stores, and believe it or not, before the announcement had gone out about them being suspects, they were actually stopped in Manitoba for a routine DUI traffic stop. With no sign of alcohol in the car, the officer sent them on their way. The officer obviously had no idea who they were at that point, which looking back is actually probably a good thing because they were armed and dangerous. I can imagine they were probably ready to start shooting if they felt the officer was onto them. After the announcement was made and the RCMP received this tip, they started to narrow in on Manitoba. That's right, they had literally crossed 3 provinces at this point. Then, on July 23rd, the RCMP received a tip about a vehicle fire in a town called Gillam in northern Manitoba, about 1,000 kilometers north of Winnipeg, and that vehicle was soon identified to be Leonard Dyck's missing Toyota RAV4. With no evidence the teens had stolen another vehicle, the RCMP believed that they were now on foot, somewhere in the dense forest in Gillam, laying low. Gillam is a very small town with a population of only about 1,000 people. It's home to Fox Lake Cree Nation, which is a First Nations band, and the majority of the members live in the town of Gillam or on the reserve land nearby. This small town went from being a town that no one had really heard of before, to being the center of the largest manhunt in Canadian history in a span of only like a couple days. The RCMP deployed the emergency response team, a crisis negotiation team, military services, drones, and canine units to Gillam. Residents of Gillam were advised to stay in their homes, lock their doors, and not to answer the door for anyone except law enforcement. I can only imagine how scary that must have been. Parole officers surveilled the town 24/7, and a checkpoint was set up at the town's entrance with heavy armed officers canvassing the area. The RCMP scoured through more than 11,000 square kilometers of dense forest and conducted searches of more than 500 homes in Gillam and nearby towns. Over 1,000 leads were investigated, including an in-depth search of the boys' homes and interviews with their parents. The search was tough though, and the RCMP acknowledged the inhospitable environment up in that area of Manitoba with the thick forests, swampy terrain. It was teeming with bugs and wild animals. Not to mention this was all happening in July when it was very, very hot. The land is described as unforgivable if you don't know what you're doing, and even very few locals venture out into this area because they're not even skilled enough to handle this kind of terrain. So it left many people thinking that the chances that Kam and Bryer could survive in this kind of area were slim. They were said to have been hunting before together and they enjoyed camping, but nothing could really prepare you for such dark, dense, and dangerous forests like the ones in this area in Manitoba. Even with all of these efforts, it wasn't long before an entire week had gone by without any sign of Kam or Bryer, which is crazy, but at the same time, this forage was huge and they needed lots of time to search it. Like, it would probably take weeks and weeks to search the entire thing. The whole country and probably all around the world, people were following this case at this point. I remember towards the end of July, I was constantly checking my phone, waiting for updates on this case. It was really the only thing on the news at this time, and people just really wanted to know how these two teenagers managed to evade the biggest manhunt in Canadian history.
The RCMP are moving with purpose in northern Manitoba, searching vehicles at check stops in and out of the community, and taking a careful look at train tracks in the area. Their goal is to find any trace of the two young men, now homicide suspects. Police are working with specialized units, including crisis negotiators.
This is a dynamic and unfolding situation. I understand that people have many questions, and we commit to providing answers as soon as we can.
But in a landscape that is vast and rugged, people say there are places to hide.
There's lots of trails, there's cabins all over in this place. They can find cabins. There's all these hydro lines they can follow, the cuts and everything like that. We have trails all over this place because it is hunting land, eh?
RCMP say they have received 80 tips in the past 48 hours, adding that their searches are detailed and will continue.
There were a couple other sightings of them reported to the RCMP, like on July 28th, a tip came in from someone who had spotted two people matching the descriptions of the fugitives in York Landing, Manitoba. They spotted them in a landfill before they ran back into the woods out of sight. But the thing about this is that York Landing is 200 kilometers southwest of Gillam. At first, this was devastating because it looked like they were searching in the wrong place the entire time. But the next day, the RCMP came out and said that they weren't able to locate the suspects and they were confident that they were searching in the right place in Gillam. It would have been very difficult for the teens to make it out of Gillam with all the surveillance and make it that far without anyone seeing them. Another tip came out shortly after that of a potential sighting of them in Ontario near Sault Ste. Marie. And I remember when this came out and being like, that's really scary, but very unlikely. Like I said, everyone was looking for these teens and it just wasn't really possible for them to travel that far without being seen. In the RCMP, they weren't able to confirm the sighting in Ontario and they continued focusing in on Gillam. More unconfirmed sightings of them in Ontario were reported though, including some sightings in Parry Sound, North Bay, and Sudbury. Then on July 30th, 9 days after the manhunt began, Manitoba RCMP announced that despite the very thorough and extensive search conducted, they had been unable to locate the suspects and were going to start scaling back the search operation. This announcement was very surprising, and I remember thinking, like, what does this mean? I was wondering, did they make it out? Did they have help? Are we ever gonna know? Is this gonna be another Robert Fisher situation? Are the victims' families ever going to get justice? It was very frustrating, is all I'm gonna say. And the residents of Gillam really wanted this to be over. Like, they wanted their lives back. They had been kind of in lockdown for more than a week at this point. But as soon as resources started being pulled, there was a major breakthrough in the case. On August 1st, the RCMP started scanning the shore along the Nelson River by boat. And that's when they spotted a backpack, which turned out to be Cam's. Inside was his wallet, clothes, and ammunition. All proof that not only the RCMP were searching in the right spot, but that they were closing in on them. It was believed that they were slowing down. They were probably really tired and running low on resources, so they were trying to discard of excess weight. Then the next day, August 2nd, a small aluminum boat was found washed up on the shore of the Nelson River by a search crew using a helicopter. The boat was pretty damaged, and the thought was that maybe they had been in the boat and gone overboard in the Nelson River. Underwater dive teams were deployed to this area and searched the river for days, but nothing was found. Both of the boys' families made pleas to them through the news, just begging them to come home. Bryer's mother handed journalists a letter explaining that Bryer was a loving and caring boy and that she wants him to know he is loved. Someone who played a vital role in this search was a man named Billy Beardy. He was a Gillam resident who was actually the one who reported Leonard Dyck's burnt out Toyota RAV4. He is a Fox Cree Nation member and was really helping out the RCMP with their investigation because he was incredibly knowledgeable about the land. He was a highly skilled bushman who knew the area better than any other local. He was so involved in the search that he was almost leading it for the RCMP. He advised them where to look and what to watch out for, and he was actually leading most of the boat searches along the Nelson River. And on August 7th, Billy and a few RCMP officers were boating south down the river when Billy spotted a raven in the air, circling over an area. He knew immediately that this was a sign of some kind of dead animal or dead thing in that area for the raven to be feeding off of. Then off the shore of the Nelson River, deep in the forest, police found the dead bodies of 19-year-old Kam McLeod and 18-year-old Bryer Schmegelski exactly where the raven was circling. 24 days after their killing spree started, roughly 3,000 kilometers and 4 provinces away from there, the manhunt was finally over. The coroner couldn't tell exactly when they had died, but it was apparent they had died from suicide. It appeared that Kam shot Bryer with his rifle before shooting himself in what police believe was a suicide pact. A cell phone, which actually belonged to Leonard Dyck, was found with the bodies, and on the cell phone were a number of very chilling videos taken by Kam and Bryer. In one of the videos, they admitted to the 3 murders and claimed that they have no regrets. In another video, they claimed that they were going to hike to Hudson's Bay, hijack a boat, and boat to Europe or Africa to commit more murders. But then in another one, they admit that they will probably have to kill themselves before saying goodbye and expressing their wishes to be cremated if their remains are ever found. The videos have never been released to the public because police believe this would be very disrespectful to the victims, and they believe that it would bring some kind of notoriety to the killers, which is the last thing they want because it could influence others to maybe do the same thing for fame. But police describe the videos as unbelievably remorseless and chilling. Police also said it didn't appear like either boy was the leader or was influencing the other. It seemed like they were both equally willing and involved. In none of the videos did either of them give any kind of explanation or motive for why they did this. A portion of one of the videos was shown to the boys' families, and this apparently left them just haunted and with a million unanswered questions. I remember when their bodies were found, and it was such a relief that the search was over, but at the same time it was kind of disappointing because they were never going to face justice for what they had done. The RCMP acknowledged that they may have never found the bodies if it weren't for Billy Beardy and the expertise he brought to the search. This man is such a hero, honestly. He literally put his life at risk to help find armed killers. He was later honored for his role in the search by the Kiiwetin Tribal Council and soon became chief of the Fox Cree Nation Band. According to the boys' families, there were some warning signs. Brian's father, Alan Schmigelski, stated his son struggled with his parents' divorce in 2005, and his main influences were YouTube and video games. Kam's parents described their son and Bryer as introverted, loner gamers. Bryer's grandmother also revealed that shortly before the murders, Bryer had been rejected by a girl that he liked. Bryer was said to be fascinated by Hitler and would collect Nazi memorabilia. Some online gamer friends of Bryer came forward with pictures he had sent to them of his Nazi collection. He was also obsessed with guns and violence from a young age. When all of this was unfolding, a former classmate of Bryer's actually came forward. Her name is Madison Hempstead, and she shared one class with Bryer in grade 7 when they were both 13 years old in Port Alberni. She said she had only had limited interactions with Bryer during that year, but what he would say to her was troubling. There were many times he would tell me and my friends ways he wanted to kill us and then himself, which is scary, she said. One of my friends commented that Bryer said he wanted to kill his whole family, which is very disturbing, and it shows that he was struggling for a very long time. Bryer's father says he's been completely overtaken with guilt since the murders and apologizes profusely to the families of the victims. He actually ended up writing a book with details on his son's troubled upbringing. I don't think it was ever published or anything. He just sent the book to reporters. The book is called Red Flagged, and in it he talks about his own mental health and how he has many harassment convictions against his ex-wife and how this may have affected Bryer. Bryer's mother actually filed many harassment charges against Alan Schmigelski because she feared that he would murder her. She also claimed that he was schizophrenic and not taking his medication. So yeah, it definitely sounds like Bryer had some pretty intense stuff that he was dealing with while he was growing up. And his father now admits that he definitely should have gotten Bryer some professional help because he was clearly in pain and struggling a lot. But other than that little insight into Bryer's upbringing, that's all we really know, and we'll never know what drove them to do this and be so remorseless. Why these two young, quiet men decided one day to go on a killing spree and take the lives of 3 innocent people will remain a mystery. The pure chance of it all is one of the most scariest parts to me, like the fact that these 3 victims were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and that there was almost a 4th victim is just very scary. The 3 victims' families will forever be haunted by this, along with Kam and Bryer's families as well, and we'll never really know what led to this. Chynna Deese's mother, Sheila, says she likes to remember Chynna and Lucas as they were seen on the CCTV footage at the gas station. You are who you are when no one is looking, and that's who they were. Chynna gets out while Lucas is filling up the van and washes the windows. They were a team, always helping each other. That footage of them hugging is really haunting, but it's a gift to see how much they loved each other. She says she often looks back at the last text she ever exchanged with Chynna and said, "There was not an ounce of worry I had about this trip because it was Canada. Canada was meant to be safe." Chynna had traveled to 13 different countries. Why would anything happen to her in Canada? I never expected that I would never hear from my daughter again. To end this video off on a good note, I wanted to share something really sweet that I found. So a month after the murders, a Yukon truck driver named Ed Grennan put up a highway memorial in honor of Chynna and Lucas at the spot where they died. He drives between Fort Nelson, BC and Whitehorse twice a week and often drives by that spot on the Alaska Highway. Ed wanted to do something to remember the young couple, so he created a memorial with an Australian flag for Lucas, an American flag for Chynna, and a floral cross in the middle. And this extreme act of kindness gained a lot of media attention, and he explained that he did this because he actually lost his daughter when she was only 17, so he knows what the victims' families are going through. He took it upon himself to honor the couple because he knew that the victims' families lived so far away and they didn't have a chance to do it for themselves. Sheila Dees was able to get in contact with Ed, and they actually speak often and are now friends. They support each other over their shared grief of losing a child. After such an unbelievably tragic series of events, it's comforting to know that there is still good out there and good people in this world. Anyway guys, that's all I have for today. I hope you found this video interesting, and please let me know what you think about this case in the comment section below. I'll see you next time.